Hello everyone, and welcome to a new series of videos about fleet combat theory. This is part 1, introduction, and hopefully this will be preceded by many more videos on the subject. So, fleet combat theory. Fleet combat in Star Citizen will be like no other game you've ever played. There's going to be a wide range of tactical abilities that you can employ, including things like ship combat, boarding, ground assault, EVA assault, bombings, and guerrilla warfare. It's almost like we're going to have like 50 different games all wrapped up into one and that are all interacting with one another, which is what makes the idea of Star Citizen so stinking cool, right? Resource management will be a key point of complexity in this game. It's going to be so much more complex than things like EVE Online, and obviously way more complex than games like even Homeworld or like StarCraft or anything like that. It's going to be, I guess, a little bit more like a Total War game in a way, but in Total War games, like resource management isn't really a thing, and there's not going to be an overmap or anything like that. Resource acquisition will not be quite as straightforward as most games. You know, like the StarCraft example, it's going to be, you know, just much more complex than go and mine the resource, right? Like there's going to be lots of transportation problems involved, logistics and supplying. Yeah, so if you have a job in in logistics and supply, then you are probably going to be able to just do your job in this game. So be looking out for that first video on resource management. So why should we study fleet combat theory? Well, chances are that whatever you do, some aspect of your gameplay will touch on fleet combat. This is going to be whether you're a 5,000 player mega org or just one guy operating a fruit stand out of a cutlass, right? Everything that you do, you're going to be traveling around, you're going to be engaging in these conflicts, or you're going to be on the sidelines. You're going to be salvaging, you're going to be doing cleanup crew work or anything like that. These massive fleet battles will be like huge instigators of the economy, and you can expect the devs will probably want to instigate them as well, but that's another discussion entirely. Knowing the basics of fleet combat will help you navigate the complex economy of Star Citizen and help you find your niche. So if you're that guy operating a fruit stand out of your cutlass, you might find it to be well worth your time to take your bananas and go sit out next to the fleet. And, you know, when they start needing food or if they need some extra fuel, you can have that on hand and you can just offload your entire cutlass worth of wares. Remember, for the Ferengi rule of acquisition number 34, war is good for business. Why will fleet battles occur? Well, the prevalence of large player organizations, also called orgs, will instigate conflict. Large orgs will be incentivized to do so for things like bragging rights, recruiting, and monetary incentive. Player-run fleets will engage against NPC fleets as well. So not just player versus player conflicts. You're also going to have player versus NPC conflicts. They're going to be just as expensive, maybe a little bit less challenging, but just as expensive. And there's going to be the same amount of resource management involved in trying to get everybody to the scene of battle. You're going to be facing, if you're engaging in these different fleets, like the UEE and the Vandal fleets, then you're going to be fighting an NPC fleet. If you remember, like for the early backers out there, if you remember Operation Pitchfork, you might be a part of Operation Pitchfork. Their whole deal is to go and fight the Vandal at the end of the beta and try and wipe them off the face of the galaxy. So that's, you know, who knows if that's actually going to ever, you know, happen, but it's a cool idea. Various player interests across the galaxy will team together to accomplish objectives, often at the expense of other factions. So even if you're not part of a large org, you might be banding together with a bunch of smaller orgs like you to create a conglomerate, which, you know, then goes off and takes part in these massive conflicts. And also, resource scarcity will probably play a role in instigating this kind of warfare. So with any kind of video like this, I have to put in some caveats and assumptions. The caveats are including things like fleet combat is still a long way out. for Star Citizen. Like, Star Citizen is nowhere where it needs to be for this to be a thing. Right now, the maximum number of players as of 3.17.3 is like 110. So that would be like 50 players on each side, which is too small for the kind of large-scale conflicts I'm talking about. And also resource management's not a thing yet. So that is a big holdup as well. But these are things we're going to talk about as we go along. Because fleet combat is still a long way out, anything in this guide is subject to review and change. And as such, please feel free to debate me in the comments and call me out where I'm wrong. I really appreciate that. I do enjoy a good debate because I want to make my personal knowledge of the subject as rich as I possibly can get. And only one person thinking about this kind of stuff will never, I'll never get the full grasp of it just myself thinking about it, right? So I need you guys to help me, and hopefully I'm helping you to kind of discover this whole huge aspect of Star Citizen that's going to be coming, and together we can kind of work on getting a good understanding of it so that we can interact with it in a positive way. Also, I have to have some key assumptions here. The first is that server meshing at some point will have to be capable of supporting large fleet operations as originally promised. That means we can have 1,000 people in general proximity of one another fighting each other with no loading screens or different shard weirdness or alternate, quantum theory, other world, other reality kind of things, right? It all has to be happening in the same server at the same time. Furthermore, all ships need to perform in their assigned roles with a relative, kind of sense of balance. I'm hopeful for that after CitizenCon 2952, right? And hearing about the new changes to the flight model, so I'm really looking forward to that. And also, I'm going to be assuming lingo throughout the series. While some of it may be based on the operations of real-world militaries, I am not an expert on naming conventions, so please bear with me. And if I have a naming convention that you don't like or you think should be changed, feel free to point it out. I have a certain kind of sense of naming stuff, and not everybody likes it. And sometimes it's not very efficient. So, again, kind of like the last point that I made earlier, feel free to point it out, and I'll try and change my ways if I agree with what you're saying there. So now that we've gone through all of that, let's go ahead and get into some of the meat of the subject. This is just an introductory video, so we're not touching on anything too complicated here. The first is just going to be fleet structure, just the general idea of what is a fleet, from a technical perspective, right? And the way I look at it is a fleet is defined in my theory as being broken into 3 distinct parts, and that those are a navy, precision operations, and special services. The Navy includes all of your fighting ships. Precision operations are, you can think of that as your ground forces, and special services are going to be the people who give you the things that you need to go kill the other, player, right? So let's go ahead and just talk briefly on those 3, and then we'll be done with the introduction video. Navy. Traditionally, what people think of when they envision a fleet, it's a bunch of ships fighting each other. Includes fighting ships. It's combat focused. It is the motive arm of the fleet, meaning it is that which strikes out and performs the operation. It's the big swinging arm of your fleet. So it's the power of your fleet. It supports precision operations, and it is the primary branch that's in charge of protecting the special services. And like I have in my little paint thing here, the Navy includes ships like capital ships, large ships, torpedo boats, heavy fighters, and interceptors. Now, a quick note on these small subclasses, you'll notice that there's a small symbol next to each of these. First, don't think of them as individual ships. Like when I'm talking about capital ships, I'm not talking about an Idris, I'm not talking about a Polaris. I'm talking about the whole realm of capital ships, right? And we're going to be going through what I mean by each and every single one of these roles. But the thing to keep in mind right now is that I'm not talking about very specific things here. I'm talking about the role of that class of ship. So what are capital ships supposed to do? What are large ships supposed to do? What are torpedo boats supposed to do? Heavy fighters, fighters, and interceptors, and all the way down, right? Precision operations. Precision operations can be thought of as ground forces. These include EVA attacks and boarding actions in space as well, so it's not just quote-unquote ground forces. It's kind of difficult to come up with a good naming convention for these, because traditionally I would have called them ground forces. But we're not just talking about the ground, right? Because we're in Star Citizen, where you can be anywhere and be fighting. So that's why these are called precision operations. So if the Navy is your giant swinging arm of the fleet, the precision operations are the fingers. They're the guys who can go in and attack specific objectives and complete specific tasks, like go in and board that ship, or go in and shut off the gravity generator of their flagship, or go down and storm the supply depot and take all the supplies. Those are precision operations. Involved with precision operations, obviously, you have armor. Armor is going to be including vehicles and tanks. So I'm not just talking about tanks, which is one tank as of right now, just the Nova. So we're also including, Gravla vehicles and armor, and we're including Cyclones and armor. So just keep that in mind. Also, electronic warfare, which includes hacking, etc. That's going to be part of precision operations because that is a precision operation. If you think about what electronic warfare is all about, it's going to be about shutting off the engines of that enemy ship. Maybe you have to land a boarding party so that your hacker can get to a certain position to do their hacking. It's going to be part of precision operations. Now, you might say, Boldy, what about engineers? Maybe you need to land a boarding party on an abandoned ship and bring engineers along with you and medical personnel along with you to help revive that ship and maybe heal crewmen and stuff like that, right? Well, yes, but I'm personally putting the medical and engineering over in the other branch, which is brain fart. I can just go special services. That's right. So they're going to be part of special services. Anyway, precision operations will be supported by the Navy and the special services. Also, drop ships are being included in precision operations as well, because if you think about what a drop ship is designed to do, it's designed to carry that force, and that is their primary role. So therefore, they fall under the branch of precision operations. Now we're in special services. Special services really will be the backbone of a fleet, and I can't stress that enough. It's kind of like saying that you're going to march from, let's say, Sedona, Arizona to Asheville, North Carolina, and you're not taking anything with you. You're not taking any food, you're not taking a car, anything, right? You're not going to make it, probably. I mean, you could hitchhike, People do it. People do backpacking. That's fair. But at least they bring the backpack. Special services are the people who are going to be providing you with the things that you need to fight. We're talking about things like ammunition, torpedoes, even ships. You're going to need to resupply ships, right? So they're going to include things like supply depots, supply ships, couriers and data runners, dedicated medical, both personnel and craft, and dedicated engineering, both personnel and craft. Also, something that's not on here, which is search and rescue. Search and rescue is going to be denoted by the same symbol there as dedicated medical. And special services support both the Navy and the precision ops, and you can think of them as the fleet's housekeeper. In conclusion, a fleet is a large, complex organism. It involves multiple parts working in tandem to accomplish the objective, whatever that objective may be, and it's usually a military objective. Obviously, organizing a fleet on a massive scale will require a large player base and extreme discipline. But fret not if you don't if you're not going to be involved in any of that kind of large scale player stuff, don't worry, because the series still going to be helpful. The series will still be helpful for you. Any and all of the sub roles displayed on the right, which are these things, every single one of these roles are niches that a single org can fit into, right? So, for example, if you notice, if you go over and look at Avenger 1, he trains fighter people, fighter craft. That's all he does. Okay? All his org does is fighter craft. It's one role. Look at how many roles there are, y'all. And Avenger 1, all he does is fighters. Now, he might do heavy fighters and interceptors as well, okay? He might branch out. But that's 3 roles, okay? If you go and look at maybe some of the other orgs, they only specialize in certain things. So you could start your own org or become a part of an org that only does tanks. Like you're just a tank crew. Like you're a squad of tanks and that is your org. And you can go and sell yourselves to the highest bidder and become a part of their fleet. So you see how that works. So the organizational structure builds and builds and builds. It doesn't have to be one org. It can be one organization that pulls in smaller orgs into it like mercenaries and pays them for their services. I think that's much more likely going to be how things turn out with how complex this whole system is shaping up to be. So everyone has something to learn from the series, and I think that we're going to have a lot of fun looking through all of this. So please like this video, subscribe so that you can get the rest of the videos in this series as soon as they show up. And I hope to see you in the next video where we'll be talking about resource management in fleets. Thanks. See ya.